Welcome to the Faith Fellowship Baptist Church Daily Devotional Series once again. And today we're in Psalm 36, which is a favorite psalm of mine. It's a great psalm that speaks to my heart. And as I was reading it, I thought of maybe a bit of a clever title that we could give it. We could call it The Lord, the Wicked, and the Warning. Maybe somewhat reminiscent of C.S. Lewis. But the Lord, the Wicked, and the Warning. Those are the three things that are kind of present in this psalm. Let's read it together. Psalm 36. In my Bible it says, "To the choir master of David, the servant of the Lord." From the ESV I'll be reading today. Transgression speaks to the wicked, deep in his heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes, for he flatters himself in his own eyes, that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. The words of his mouth are trouble and deceit. He has ceased to act wisely and do good. He plots trouble while on his bed. He sets himself in a way that is not good. He does not reject evil. Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mountains of God, your judgments are like the great deep. Man and beast you save, O Lord. How precious is your steadfast love, O God! The children of mankind take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light do we see light. Oh, continue your steadfast love to those who know you, and your righteousness to the upright of heart. Let not the foot of arrogance come upon me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away. There the evildoers lie fallen. They are thrust down, unable to rise. So largely, this psalm does come in two parts, and there's a very stark break between the two parts that you probably noticed in the middle of the psalm. And then the third part of the psalm ties them together. Verses 1 to 4 speak firstly of the wicked. Obviously, right off the bat, transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. And it boils down to this whole section that there is no fear of God before his eyes. This can come from a number of ways, this not having a fear of God before your eyes. Firstly, a lot of people in our culture just deny the fact that there is a God. So if there is no God, then why would they fear God? If there is no God, then we can do whatever we want, right? But even if we acknowledge that there's a God, we can also tend to err in how we understand God in a couple of different ways that cause us to not fear him as we ought to as well. And so often mentioned is the dual concepts of the transcendency of God and the immanence of God. Those are the two different things. The transcendency of God, meaning that God is above all things, that he is beyond all things. He is bigger than all things because he created all things. God is large and he's over the universe. He set it in place. He spoke and it was in motion. God is transcendent. He's huge. He's over all the earth. The immanence of God is when God is near, when God is close. And we can understand that God is loving and kind and all of these things, and he's intimately involved in our lives. Immanence, intimate, kind of has that same connotation of God is involved in the details of what's going on. And if we neglect these things, then we fall into a couple of different traps. Verse 2 actually has someone falling into the trap of rejecting or forgetting the immanence of God. Verse 2 says, "For he flatters himself," the wicked man, "he flatters himself in his own eyes that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated." This is rejecting the immanence of God, that God is there with you in the moment. He's saying, no one's going to know. No one's going to know the wicked things that I do. I can do whatever I want. No one's going to find out. And there's the pride there of I'm above the law in essence, right? God's not going to see me. He can't find out what I did. I'm doing this all in secret. There's no one to watch over me. Then verses 3 and 4 speak a little bit to what happens if we neglect the transcendency of God. The words of his mouth, of this wicked man, they're trouble and deceit. He has ceased to act wisely and do good. He plots trouble while on his bed. He sets himself in a way that is not good. He does not reject evil. So even if we recognize that God is close, this section is saying it's denying the goodness and evilness of actions. It's saying there's no transcendent tone setter or standard setter over all things. There's no one who's going to judge me in the end, even if God sees what I'm doing. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do evil. There's no power behind this seeing of what I'm doing. These are the two camps that people can tend to fall into in our wickedness, is either, well, God can't see me, so it doesn't matter, or God can't do anything about it, so it doesn't matter. These are even within those of us who acknowledge that there's a God, much less the lack of fear of God in the eyes of those who don't believe that there is a God. They would also believe their evil could not be found out because there is no such thing as good or evil if there's no objective moral setter. And so this is the way that the evil person lives. And we point out the sins that are listed here, right? There's pride, a flattery of oneself in his own eyes. There's the words of his mouth are trouble and deceit. Speaking evilly is the sin that's pointed out here. Not acting wisely or doing good. Plotting to do trouble. Planning to do trouble. Setting himself in a way that is not good, and not rejecting or saying no to evil, to the evil desires of the heart. Those are all marks of the wicked that sometimes we can even find creeping into our life as Christians, and we need to be on guard for our pride, on guard for how we use our mouth, our speech. Are we choosing to do what is good? Are we plotting to do what is evil? Are we even resisting when evil comes our way? These are the marks of wickedness. And then starkly contrasted, without barely even a pause, is the character of God. Verses 5 and 6 then proceed to show us the transcendence of God in his full display. It says, "Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mountains, your judgments are like the great deep. Man and beast you save, O Lord." What a wonderful picture. We have the heavens above the skies is what that would kind of seem to indicate to us, right? The heavens, the stars, the universe on all its display. The clouds would be the skies. The mountains is the land, the greatest part of the land that we know, the most powerful and awe-inspiring part. And then the great deep, the sea. David is writing about the transcendence of God and pointing out that God's love and faithfulness and righteousness and his judgments are actually greater than anything that we can know of or fathom on this earth. He's saying God's characteristics are magnificent. They're huge. They extend to the heavens and the clouds and the mountains and the deeps of the earth. Over all of this is God's character, which we then remember that we're contrasting to the wicked person who does not even reject evil. There's not even a little bit of goodness in the wicked person. And yet God's goodness is over all of these things, over all of creation, greater than all of that. And then verses 7 to 9 show God's immanence. They show how those who know God have the chance for an intimate or near walk with him. Through his steadfast love, we can take refuge in him from the hazards of this life, verse 7. We can be satisfied in our souls as if we had feasted on the greatest of banquets when we have Jesus. And we can drink from the river of God's delights. That's what verse 8 says. We can be with God. With him is life, and with him is light, in the midst of a world full of death and darkness and evil and wickedness and all of those things. That's verse 9 there. So God's intimately close to us as well. He satisfies our souls. He walks with us. He protects us. He gives us life and light to live through this world. All of those things are then tied together. The first section, the second section, the character of the wicked, the character of God, in verses 10, 11, and 12. He ties these thoughts together in a way that sounds a little bit as a warning and an encouragement to us as the reader. Verse 10, he says, "Continue your steadfast love to God." And it's not that David is worried that God won't. I don't think that's what he's trying to get across to us, right? Where he's like, if I don't ask God, he's going to forget me and not love me anymore. That's not what David's saying at all. David knows that it's only by God's mercy and love and grace that he was saved in the first place, just like you and me. And it's only by that same love and mercy and grace that he can walk each day with God. That only if God continues in his steadfast love will David be able to be sustained in this walk with God. It's not that God saved David so now David can pull up his socks and try his hardest to walk in God's way and that'll be good. No, David knows what will happen if he tries to do that. If he tries to do this life without God's continual steadfast love. And he says that in verse 11. Let not the foot of arrogance come upon me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away. If we try to live the Christian life without a close walk with God, without an awareness and even a cognitive remembrance of his steadfast, sustaining, enduring, enabling love, then we will inevitably turn either to arrogance or to wickedness. We'll either puff ourselves up as we live this life and we'll say, oh, I'm doing a rather good job. God saved me, and now I've gotten rid of all the sin in my life, and I'm doing so good, and look at her and him, and they're not doing very well in their walk. Look at how good I'm doing. And then all of a sudden, we're guilty of the sin of pride in our life, of trying to puff ourselves up and keep all the rules as best as we can to impress God after he saved us. Look at what you saved me and what I can do now. We fall into arrogance if we fall that way. And so David says, let not the foot of arrogance come upon me. And then also he says, nor let the hand of the wicked drive me away. That's the other option. If we try to live this Christian life without a close walk with God, without an intimate knowledge of him and a walk with him, if our relationship with him isn't there, others will tend to step in and fill it. And the wicked then will be able to come and grab us and pull us away. We will slowly but surely drift, as Pastor Dan preached that sermon that stuck with me from the book of Hebrews. We will drift away from God, and the wickedness certainly don't help with that. They pull us away from God. And so David says, don't let me be arrogant, thinking I'm doing so great on my own. Also, don't let the wicked pull me away. Keep me with you. Continue your steadfast love to those that know you, and your righteousness to the upright in heart. The outcome, if we try to live this life on our own without God, without a knowledge of him, without an acknowledgement of his salvation and the need we have for that, well, that's verse 12. The evildoers, they lie fallen. They are thrust down. They're unable to rise. There's no spiritual ability that we have to save ourselves. The evildoers in this world are unable to rise on their own merit. Even if they live in arrogance, even if they live with the wicked, there's no ability to rise. And David says that at the end of this psalm as a reminder and maybe a warning to us not to fall into those things. The good news here is that Jesus is with us and that he's already won the day. God is over all the things in this world. His character cannot be thwarted by the wickedness of mankind. He's also imminently close to those who he saved, satisfying our souls and giving us strength to face each day and to live for him. We can recognize, again, the sobering thought is that our hearts are cut from the same cloth as those who we call wicked and who we maybe look down upon. But we've been regenerated, we've been redeemed, and we can be sustained by the steadfast love of God. That's the difference in our life, is his love. And so David prays, continue your steadfast love as you and I can today.